Welcome to the Heroic Minds podcast, where we uncover the heroic stories of individuals battling through adversity and rising to the top of professional sport, business, and life. Uncovering the characteristics, the secrets, the tactics to become the hero of your own story, because it is adversity that maximizes human potential. Welcome back to the Heroic Minds podcast. On today's episode, we have Joanne George and her dog Smiley. I thought I would do our little blurb about amazing company True Local early on here. So remember to check out True Local at the end of this episode, truelocal.ca. High quality meat, individually packaged, shipped to your doorstep, and you choose the meat that shows up to your doorstep. I'm telling you, once you try out this company, their meat, it's hard to go back to the regular stuff. Just a warning. Use their discount code. Actually, it's our discount code. They made this code specifically for the podcast. So if you use Heroic Minds 25, all capital letters, you get 10% off a personal size box and 25% off a regular size box. So check them out at truelocal.ca. This is a story of a dog that was born without eyes, a dog that couldn't find a home. One day, Joanne decided Smiley was going to go from a foster dog to her own dog. And that's where Smiley took on a journey of his own, a journey where he became a source of hope, the ability to save people's lives, the ability to bring joy to people's lives that may have never felt joy before. And one day, Smiley unfortunately passed away. But the most amazing thing is that Smiley's legacy lives on. He just had a statue made. Joanne continues to travel to different schools and different groups and different residences, sharing Smiley's story. And now a new dog by the name of Sunny has taken Smiley's place, who also was born without eyes. So needless to say, the legacy of Smiley lives on. Within that legacy are tons of impactful, life-changing messages of how we treat people that may be different, of how we approach people that may be different, how simple it is for anyone to make someone's day, to really change their life, and it may only take a smile. So this episode is a lot of fun because it's life lessons from the journey of a dog. It leaves you with a sense of warmth and optimism and positivity, and just feels so nice to hear. A dog that saved people's lives, a dog that brought joy to people's lives that have never felt joy before. So in memory of Smiley, this is his story.
So I had just lost a rescue, a Great Dane that I had, a great big Great Dane, and we had put him to sleep, and he was very old, and anyway, the vet that came out, I worked for a vet, and when we finished with Duke, she told me that she had heard about this blind golden retriever that, was part of a puppy mill and that really needed help. And I just remember thinking, I can't even go there. That is the last thing I feel like doing. She knew that, I took these rescues into my home, and Duke was a rescue. And anyway, within a few days, I asked her more about the golden retrievers and this puppy mill. And the owner of the puppy mill had asked that a group of dogs be euthanized because the SPCA had come in and done a preliminary investigation. And I was working as a veterinary technician at a hospital, and we got a call about from a puppy mill. That's what I will call her. She would obviously not call herself that, but having over 100 dogs, 100 golden retrievers in her possession that she's unable to care for, that is the true definition of a puppy mill. So she can call it all she wants, but it was a puppy mill and a hoarding situation. So she had a list of dogs that needed veterinary care by the SPCA, and she was unable to provide veterinary care for these dogs. So her choice was to euthanize this list of about 20 dogs. And Smiley, this little blind dog, was on that list. And so we were asked to come there to euthanize this list of 20 dogs. And I remember saying to my boss, I'm not going there and holding 20 golden retrievers down to be euthanized. I'm not doing that. But the plan is that we were hoping that we would go there and look to her for some kind of, compassion, and let us take all these dogs, and that we would fix them and find them homes. So that's what we were praying, but it really was her final decision. Dogs are property, and so we went there. I borrowed a couple trucks from my dad and from friends, and we were there with our fingers crossed that she would give us these dogs instead of ordering us to put them down. And we were successful. We kept a nice smile on our face and tried not to, say what we wanted to say. And she gave us the dogs, and Smiley was one of them. We split this group of 20 dogs up between about 3 of us. And Smiley came with me to my house, and we found all these dogs homes very quick. They're golden retrievers, and they bounce back very quickly from whatever what situation they're in. But Smiley, we tried very hard, and nobody would take Smiley. They would come and meet him, and they all just, first of all, they said they'd never, everybody was in shock because nobody had ever heard of a dog being born without eyes. And I'll remind you that this is back before, social media, this is before the internet, before being able to Google anything that you wanted and find something about them. So I would say if your neighbors didn't have a blind dog or a dog born without eyes, or somebody on your street, you didn't know about it. You had to have somebody that you knew with a dog born without eyes for you to know it existed. It just wasn't shared, yet. It was impossible. So everybody who came to see the dogs for adopting them, it was just, blind dog. I don't think we could do that. We have a cottage. We couldn't have a blind dog. We have a cottage. And I make this face like, what does that have to do with it? And we have kids. And I even started listening to these people going, I actually started thinking, wow, these people are making it sound really difficult, and I've been living with this dog. And we're a very busy family. We like to go hiking, and so we could never have a blind dog. I'm like, maybe a blind dog can't go hiking. Maybe a blind dog can't go to the cottage and be around kids. I didn't know, And so really he just stayed with me because nobody would take him. I actively searched for 8-9 months, taking him places and going, ooh, you like that? Do you like him? He needs a home. And, and he was so cute, but nothing could make people think that this was going to be a normal dog ownership. So he just stayed. And then all of a sudden one day I just said to myself, okay, I'm going to stop looking. He's going to stay. And by this time we had made such great progress with him, and to be truthful, we did go through some difficulties with him. He did have anxiety. He was destructive. He wasn't house trained. There were those things that we had to work on, but that's no different than any other dog you may adopt. That's where he actually started to really get better, is because I couldn't leave him in a crate at home because he would mess and then go crazy and dig at the cage and injure his nose and his claws, and he'd poop all over, and then if I left him out, he would be eating everything. Just every cord, anything. He would hide in corners, and so if you think, what would be in a corner would be that. So he would chew that cord of that lamp, or he would get in behind something and chew behind something. So he started coming with me everywhere I went, and I took him everywhere. I'm like,
because you couldn't leave him.
I couldn't leave him. I couldn't leave him at home. So my only choice was, so he came to work with me every day at the vet clinic. He came with me to the barn every single day. He went to every single friend's house. He went to every event that I went to. And so that's all he needed was that socialization, which again, every dog needs, so, and I could only, every time we went out to my truck, I just remember thinking, I can't lift you anymore. And so you're going to have to learn to jump into this truck. And, we did it. And now he was jumping into the truck, and now he was coming through the doorways, which, he didn't like to do, or, so that just made it all come together. And he started to become this wonderful dog. And I recall meeting the first few people out for walks. And I still had a Great Dane. I had a Great Dane when I got him. And he was a rescue. He was what they consider an albino. So he was kind of scary looking. You think of, 125 pound tall, big Great Dane. And he was pure white with like red eyes. Wow. And he had a huge personality. And this is where I really came up with that Smiley sees with his heart. This dog, this Great Dane, had no dog friends. Dogs were terrified of him because he was different looking. He was huge and he was white and he had these albino red eyes. And he was also usually bouncing around like very excitable, like, oh, here comes a dog. And they would, somebody walking their dog would always cross the road. And even if a dog came into the house, they would just cower from him right away. They just saw this as very scary. And, right from the day one when I brought in Smiley, I was very concerned for him. And since Smiley didn't see this difference, didn't see that Tyler was, different looking and scary looking almost, he really was. He didn't see that, and right away they became best friends. And it was so cute because Tyler really had never had a friend to play with. He was too big and too different. And anyway, these two, Smiley and Tyler would wrestle and play, and that really also brought, I think, Smiley out of his shell. Tyler's energy told Smiley this was a pretty good place. Life is good. He was so happy and so bouncy. So that's really where I came up with this. Smiley was seen with his heart. He didn't judge Tyler. He didn't look at him and decide whether he liked this dog by what he looked like. So he didn't judge. And that's what we're trying to teach everybody is to, you realize if we all saw with our hearts and we didn't judge somebody by what they looked like or what clothes they wore, or what color their hair was, or how tall they were, or how short they were, wow, the world would be a wonderful place. So that's really where that came from, and that really stuck with me. But then we started meeting people out on the street.
And at this point, now that you're meeting people out on the street doing all these things, is Smiley starting, now with the new relationship with Tyler as well, the Great Dane, are those issues of being at home alone and being in the corner, they're starting
fading
to...
away.
Okay.
They are fading away. You know what? So it was really amazing. And then so these people that we would meet up on the street, and they'd walk towards us, and I'd see them, they'd look at him, and Smiley would walk kind of sometimes with his head down, or it would be bobbing, checking out his surroundings, or, kind of bouncing off of Tyler, finding his way. And people would stop to see him, and they'd say, oh, he's got his, what's wrong with his eyes? And I'd just say, he doesn't have any. And then they'd look down at him again, and like 95% of the time they would say, then how does he see? And I would just go, he doesn't have any eyes. He doesn't. He has no eyes. Well, how does he see? And I'd say, he doesn't. And then they'd step back and they'd watch him and they'd say, well, he must see something. They needed convincing every time.
Well, to be out walking and being independent, you must be able to see some way. Yeah.
Well, how is he out here walking? And I tried not to be, too sarcastic, but really I was like, just walking. And he just doesn't see. He's seeing the world in a different ways. I'm giving lessons to these grown adults about our five senses, and how they can get around. And they would I'd see them, they'd just be like, okay then, bye, and I'd see a couple of them, actually, that really hit me. I saw them again, the same people, a few weeks later. And I remember this woman who had come out to see us. She came running down the street when she saw us. And she was saying, do you remember me? Do you remember me? I saw you guys last week. I'd say, yeah. And she just dropped down to Smiley's level and stroking his head and kind of, she was starting to sob, like just melt into him more. And she just said, she goes, last week when I saw you, she says, I was going through a very difficult time. And she said, after I met you and talked to you and met Smiley and saw the way he was and how confident he was, how happy he was, how not being able to see anything didn't bother him. She said that it changed my life. I realized that, wow, if he can do this, look how happy he is. Look where he came from. Look where he is now, and look how happy he is. He's not dwelling on his, painful past or, that he can't see. He's just living today, And she says, I have been a different person ever since meeting him. And I was just like, wow. I was stunned. She went away, and I was in shock. And actually, I dropped down to Smiley right after that. After she left, and just thought, buddy, look what people are seeing this. And truly, that was the moment I thought, I have heard of therapy dogs. I've heard of them. I don't know much about it, but I think that's what he needs to be. If we can change one person's life just like that, from meeting them, I need to share him, and I need, people who might need him to meet him and hear a story. So, and again, this was still before social media. So, this was my way of sharing his inspirational story. And so I set out and I heard from somebody that did this therapy work, and there's a couple different organizations, and I found St. John Ambulance, and they have a great therapy program, and they typically visit nursing homes and hospitals, and since then they've found so many more places where therapy dogs can be of benefit. They're using them in the courts, they're using them in classrooms and schools and libraries and
airplanes.
Comfort dogs after a disaster, group homes. They just, so many places. High schools, you don't think of that. Those kids, are, going through there's a lot of pressure there. And so it's just amazing how even, in the time that I've been with the therapy dog program, how much it's changed.
And for Smiley in that program, I have to ask, how do you see, not even from a science side, but from just an observation side, how did Smiley get to the point where, even seeing Sonny, their ability to move around and know exactly where I was and where to jump up, and their senses, do you know, or did you observe how Smiley got to that point? Like, I assume it has to do with sound, or? Yeah,
it's everything. And this is a fun thing that when we go into the classrooms talking to kids about being born different and how we just find ways. It's everything. I ask the kids about, okay, tell me the senses that you have and what you use. And we talk about touch. And, people a lot of times note that these blind dogs walk with a very high step. And I relate it to the kids that when you get up in the middle of the night and it's pitch dark, but you have to find your way to the bathroom and you can't find the light switch in the bathroom, what they have to do. They're kind of beating on the wall, going back and forth, trying to find the light switch, but you're doing big hand movements to find it. And then finally you find it, so that's kind of even the way they use their paws. Smiley and Sonny never fell off the dock at the cottage. They never fell off the edges of anything because they are truly using their feet. They're feeling the edges. They feel the edges of the path through the forest, from sand to grass to bush to, they carpet to floor, they know door things. But the real turning point for me, I was a dog trainer, and a very, just sort of structured dog trainer. Sit, down, stay, heel, come, that kind of thing. It was very regimented, that was dog training. And, it was all about verbals and hand signals. And the first time I took Smiley to the cottage, and he's a golden retriever, which is, they're a hunting retriever dog. They're a water dog especially. And that's instinctual, blind or not. And this is what taught me this. So whether he can see or not, his instincts are there. He was born with those instincts. And when I got him, he had never had a bath, let alone gone swimming. And I took him, we got to the lake, got to the cottage, and there's a very big hill to get down to the lake. You pull up to the cottage and it's there. And we got out, and he instantly, the nose went up, and it's a big lake, and I remember it was rough that day, and he stood at the top of that hill, and he was drawn down to that water, and the hill is pretty brutal, and he I was starting to learn that, you know what, I have to let him do things. If I do something for him, just like kids, if something's always done for you, you never learn. And that's one thing I had already learned. And he was drawn to that water, and his nose went up in the air sniffing, and he was right away making his way down to that lake. And so I just sort of went very slowly behind him, and I let him go ahead, and I watched. And I didn't even go all the way down with him. I stopped halfway down the hill, and I let him go down, and I watched. He heard the water splashing on the shoreline, and he instantly went to that noise. And when the wave came up and touched his paw, I never forget, he just jumped back like, what was that? Like and I just sat there and I watched. I never said a word. And then a wave came over here, so he jumped over there at that noise, because it was just like a whoosh, you know, so he jumped at that, like, kind of playful. And same thing, it touched his toes and he jumped back. Then a wave came over here and he jumped over there, and it was like he was chasing these waves, and he was just, and you remember, he was also young too back then. People never, you know, saw him young, because we didn't have any videos of him, but he pounced, then he started pouncing and jumping at the break of the waves, and then he just started walking in deeper and deeper, and we had, you know, it's a nice beach like that, and he just walked in and he swam, you know.
Wow.
I didn't ever have to take him in, he just did it, and that was his instincts, and I watched that, and I never forget, I had tears rolling down my face, because I realized not that he didn't need me, but instinct is so much greater than anything I could teach him. You know, if you let them be dogs, you know, and that's what you have to remember, it's a dog, he's a dog, number one, you know, and it's an animal, you know. Animals survive, and they figure things out, and they find food, so anyway.
They also find socks and shoes.
Yes, that's right. So that was a big turning point, that I could have never made that happen any better. That introduction to water, I couldn't, you know, people are always, you know, trying to take how do I teach my dog to swim, and how do I introduce the water? You know what? Sometimes we ruin things with our dogs. You know, we think of them as kids, and we try to do things for them, or, you know, coddle them when they might be nervous. And that works for kids, having a hand over them and telling them it's going to be okay. But with dogs, that actually has the opposite effect. You know, I always tell people, if I say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, buddy, you're okay, you're okay, all that dog hears is,
Oh, that's right.
And to a dog, that means it's whimpering. And that means I'm scared, I'm nervous, something bad is happening. You know, whimpering is not confidence. You know, a leader doesn't whimper. A leader doesn't whine. And so if I were to whine and whimper to Smiley, even more so than another dog, because he's really
relying
just
so much on
my energy and, you know, just the sounds, he would think there was something terribly wrong.
Since recording this episode, I actually already applied this idea to my life, and it was in coaching. And this exact example isn't only for animals, it totally relates to humans as well. And I think about when I'm coaching, I'm on the bench and things might not be going our way. How do I say things, and what do I say? Do I want things to sound as if I truly believe everything's out of control and we have no chance of getting out of this rut? Because that's how they're going to hear it. That's how my players are going to hear their leader, their coach. You know, Ben's sobbing, or he's saying everything's going to be okay, as if everything's not okay. That's why I'm saying that. Well, now I checked how I was saying things when we were down a goal or two. How do you treat the bench at that point? Because they're going to hear it just like Joanne just talked about. Do they want a coach back there that's worried and sobbing and sad? You know, obviously this is in a bit of a different context, but you can follow me with this. Or do I come at it from another way? So we're in a rut, we're in an issue here. As a team, they need their leader knowing, no, we're going to battle. We're coming in waves now. We're coming in waves. We're in this spot, but that's fine. We're coming and we're not stopping. As opposed to, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Just relax. We're okay. You know, it made me question how I speak and deliver my messages now when we are in a tough spot. More of what we say is understood visually and emotionally, as opposed to exactly what's being said. So it's something to keep in mind in how we deliver our messages as opposed to what's being delivered.
And he would not have gone in that water. So, that was a huge breaking point of training, there that, this was, I just had to be there with him and, keep him safe. Assure people, I let him do his own thing, but keeping him safe at the same time. But, just like jumping up into the truck. If I lifted him everywhere, like put him in a truck, he wouldn't even know where he was because I put him there. He doesn't know how high he is. He doesn't know what he's in, so I always joke with the kids right now when I take Sonny to do these classroom visits because he's small, so I put him up on a chair so they can see from the back, and he's sitting on that chair and they're like, he's not jumping down. I said, well, because I placed him up on that chair. I said, he doesn't know if he's on the top of Niagara Falls, and they're going to kick out of that, but it's true. He's not jumping off there. He doesn't know how high I put him, so, and, the kids all start panicking if they see him, like, get his feet to the edge of the chair. And I said, he's not going to fall. He knows the edge, and he also is not going to jump down, and he obviously never does.
And do you make these comparisons? I feel like I'm sure that's what you do, is you draw these comparisons from Smiley and Sonny's way of adapting and being happy to these kids' lives, these young kids. What would be the strongest correlations or the messages that are best received, or the ones that you like to really hammer home and deliver?
There's a few, I will say. One of the ones that's most passionate to me is the anti-bullying campaign. And I think this really strikes the kids and they get it. There are people that travel to these schools every year during, the anti-bullying week, and they talk to these kids about not picking on and not bullying. It still happens, okay? We give them stories and it still happens. So when I got Smiley, he had scars on his face, like big cuts out of his cheeks. He had splits in his ears. He had old wounds, all over his face. And I can obviously only assume that is from living with so many dogs and being blind. These are all dogs. They were all trying to survive and get food. There wasn't 100 dog bowls there, so, food was, shared. And, if he went towards a dog, I'm sure, especially with food, he'd smell food, go towards it, not his food, get bit in the face. So I would tell the kids that all these other dogs were very mean to him. Just because he was born different, just because he was born blind, they picked on him. They didn't share food, they didn't share toys. Elaborate, they wouldn't let him play. I'm sure it wasn't all about play there, you know what I mean?
Right.
But just so they can make a bit more connection, that they were mean. They wouldn't let him play, they wouldn't let him eat, they wouldn't let him come over here. And I'd ask the kids, I said, what is that? What's that called? What were those dogs being? And they shout out. I say, shout it out. They say, bullies. They were being bullies. And I said, is it fair that Smiley got picked on because he was born different? Is it Smiley's fault he was born different? And they yell out no. And I also say that
for those that have listened to past episodes, you would know that I think challenging someone's ego is the best way to change their thought. And in challenging the ego here, this actually made me quite sad, because it makes me think how many people are mistreated or judged, and they won't complain because it's always been that way, and they don't know that there's a better part of life, or there's a different way that they can be treated and be more respected. It's sad to think about.
Smiley must have thought this was going to be his life. He doesn't know anything outside of this place. And I feel that kids don't know anything outside of school, right? Mm-hmm. This is it. Their whole life is school. And if they're getting bullied, they must think the world is pretty bad, because there's many kids that think it's bad enough to end their life from being bullied at school. And and it depends on what age group I'm talking to, but the connection really to tell these kids is that Smiley probably thought this was the end. This was going to be his life. This was going to be his forever. And I'm sure he just thought, this sucks. This is pretty bad. I said, but one day I came along and I took him out. And as soon as he got outside of that puppy mill, instantly he got to be himself. He got to show the world who he was. And he wasn't just a blind dog. That label that had been put on him in the puppy mill of blind dog was gone. He got to show them what he could do and not what he couldn't do. And instantly, the next day, of coming out of there, everybody thought he was the best dog in the world.
Yeah.
How was that? He was nothing when he was there. But as soon as it was over, he bloomed, and everybody saw, wow, this is amazing. This is amazing to be different. Oh my gosh, he's the best dog in the world, and became famous. And that's what I want kids to know, is that this is not this school thing. You do need to get through it. And once you're finished, the world is yours. You can do whatever you want. Right now, you have to do what the teachers tell you, and you have to study what they're telling you, and you have to do this. But once you're out, it's just about you, and you get to do whatever you want, and you get to show the world who you are. And the biggest tragedy out there is when a child thinks that there's no way out, and they choose to take their life. And if kids could maybe just make that connection, in some small way, that maybe life is hard and maybe there's cruel people out there, but I'm going to be able to be somebody as soon as I'm out of here one day. So that's...
And when you say that, it's almost as if it's an acceptance that is going to be a part of growing up, which is an interesting idea, that you say you're in school, and once you get out, once you get through that tough time, it's your approach isn't necessarily to change that it's going to be tough, which I really respect. I think that's an interesting point, because yes, we would love to limit and get rid of bullying if possible, but I feel like
it's not happening.
Which is an interesting. You're not saying we're getting rid of the bullying. It's almost you can get through it.
Yeah, these kids have to know that they can get through it, and as soon as there's however many more years, you know what I mean, that you got to get through it. But then the world just opens up for you. And there's a lot of kids, you've heard the stories. They don't make it through. And whatever it is, that if they only knew, that's how I always think, if they only knew, they would be, there's something after that. So I'm hoping that the kids that I get to, they're not going to bully somebody for being different. And I talk about having curly hair and straight hair, and what you wear, those are reasons why people get bullied. So it's so crazy, that
So when we hear this idea of young individuals making fun of others for their hair or their height or what they're wearing, we think, oh, well, they're just kids, it's just silly, right? For kids to think that, it's just silly. And then you think of adults, grown-ups, making conclusions or drawing their own conclusions, putting labels on people, or looking down towards people in society because of something they can't control, or a religion that they believe in because that's how they were raised, and now we paint these people with certain labels, treat them a certain way. Are those situations really that different? Because we kind of giggle or laugh when we see that kids are drawing those conclusions because of their hair or their height. And is it just as silly for adults to be doing the same thing, but just in a different context? And I don't know, I think there are more similarities there than we may think.
Smiley was half the size of a regular golden retriever. All the other Goldens at that place were big. Smiley was very little. He was half the size. Just like, I get the kids to look at the kids sitting next to them. Are you different? Are you the same? Would that be really boring if you guys were all the same height and, and same color hair and you look the same? Yes, and I get them to really figure this out too themselves, and,
It's amazing.
So being born different is amazing.
Yeah.
Look at Smiley. Everybody loves Smiley. You know why? Because he was different.
He was a rock star.
And they saw him do great, just get by. Not even do great things. They saw him get by and be happy about his life. And the other thing that kids really relate to is, I'll ask the kids, who here, struggled to, and I might use the example of reading or math, and I'll say, who here struggled when they first learned to read? Who had trouble? And, half the class.
Myself as well.
Yeah. Did you, and then who found it so easy and you did it really easy? And, some kids too. I'll say the kids that were having trouble, you had to get extra help. You had to work hard at it. You probably got very frustrated because you couldn't put those words together. And, and same thing with math. Did you have to get extra help? Did you find it really tough? Did it take you a lot longer than maybe the rest of the class? And extra help and such. But can you all read now? And then all the hands go up. Can you all read? Yes, everybody's hand goes up. I said, it doesn't matter how long it took you or how difficult it was. It's the fact that you did it and you can read today, and you all can read. It doesn't matter how you did it really easy and you took a bit longer. It doesn't matter. I said, Smiley or Sonny, I make the relation that a lot of times we would be, say, upstairs, or, I'll just give the example. He had to come through here, and there's all these chairs, and we had to come up these 3 flights of stairs to get here. I said, he took a long time. I said, he was very scared going up those stairs. It took him a long time. He was very slow. But guess what? He got to the top of the stairs. So it doesn't matter how long it took? No. And so they make the connection that it's okay that it took you longer than the kid next to you in class. It's all right. It's okay if you need extra help. It's okay if you need, just more help on something. And, is that not something that everybody struggled with? You say, if you struggled to read at the beginning, you thought that was the worst thing. Because, hey, Ben, can you read page 14 out loud? Oh, God, no. Like, everybody's going to laugh at me. They're going to correct me. They're all going to know. It was horrible, And as long as even the kids that are really good know that we all learn differently, so
it's I just find it, I don't know what it is about putting those life ideas and concepts that we could just have that conversation, but when you tie it to the story of a puppy or a dog,
yeah, exactly,
it packs so much more of a punch. And now my wheels are even turning. Like even today, it's like I want to start a company or something. I want to start it yesterday. Like it needs to get done, and we're also worried about getting things done as quick as possible.
Yeah.
And it's a story of a dog, but you can relate it to
so many ways.
Adults chasing other things and teenagers doing. It's not just the childhood.
No, it's not just
issues,
kids.
right?
And as you see, from his social media, it's somebody that's 6 years old up to 85. You know what I mean? Everybody can relate. Everybody can connect with him in some way, and everybody seems to in a different way. You know what I mean? Like you may connect with him in this way, and just so.
Yeah. Have you, and now with people with an older demographic, have you had instances of people reaching out or a connection to Smiley or Sonny that you maybe didn't even see coming, or an impact that went beyond what you could have ever dreamed of? I mean, it sounded like it already did out of the gates, but now that you have this established, even still, are you getting blown away by?
Absolutely. And like I said, of all these years of having him, I've heard wonderful stories, of what Smiley means to them and how he's helped them and, brought them out of, maybe some depression or anxieties or, struggling through something, something with their own dog. It could be just something, I would have put my dog to sleep because he ended up with some kind of ocular disease and he was going to lose both eyes. And they said to me, I would have put the dog to sleep because I would have never thought he could be happy without his eyes. And because of Smiley, they didn't euthanize him, because they saw that what a wonderful life they could still lead. And I heard that many times. So that, is even what an amazing thing. Yeah. I'm an animal rescuer, and also it has inspired people to rescue dogs with special needs, not just, blind, all kinds of special needs, that because people are realizing you just treat them the same, and it's a dog. Doesn't matter if they got 3 legs or this, whatever. They're deaf, blind, so many disabilities, just like us. So there's all these wonderful things that have come out to me, but truly the one that resonates the most is after Smiley passed last year. Only a few days later, people knew. Obviously, just like any of us lose a cherished dog, pet, it's pretty bad, it's very sad. So this woman reached out to me, and the heading on her email was "Smiley saved my life." And I'll be truthful, I couldn't read all the emails that came in after, people just trying to help, you know what I mean? And it was wonderful. I couldn't possibly read them all. And obviously with this one, with the title in there, the subject, "Smiley saved my life," I opened it up, and it was a very long email telling me what she had suffered with, with, her life. And one day she was on her bed, and at her bedside table, she had a bottle of pills and she had a razor blade. And the only thing she was doing next was just deciding which to use to end her life. And she lied there, and her phone was right there, and she chose to pick up her phone, and she turned on Instagram, and she hadn't even followed Smiley, but it was one of those
like the
ones that just popped up. Yeah, exactly. It was what was on when she turned on Instagram, and she just watched it. She said, and she says, then I went to your page, and she goes, I watched the next video and the picture, and I read your posts about what Smiley was doing, and she says, I started smiling, and then something that Smiley did, then she says, then I giggled, and she said, and eventually she was out of that crisis that she was in, that she was prepared to take her life. And she said she's now getting by every time she feels like she's going into a crisis, she turns on to Smiley's Facebook or Instagram page to be brought out of that. And like I said, that's it. That's all I needed, If that was the only email that I ever got, or the only testimony from somebody that Smiley had, benefited them, that would, Smiley's whole life, that was it. You know what I mean? That was enough for me. And that also truly, I think, brought me, like I said, it was 7 days after we had lost Smiley. And that put me in a different place. You know what I mean? Like, what a godsend. You know what I mean? One dog to save one life, not to mention my own and the hundreds, probably others. But that meant so much to me. And, there was, even before that, there was never any, I want to say regrets, like when people lose a pet, it's, maybe I wish I had done this, and they say things like that. But you know what? I did as much as I could with Smiley, and I shared him with the world. I tried to share him, he was a special dog, and he had a lot to teach. And I feel like I did him proud, you know what I mean? I feel like he was a gift, to me. And you know what? I recognized it and shared him.
That's amazing. We'll get some Kleenex.
Good thing this is just audio.
Yes, exactly.
You guys don't have to see me ugly crap.
So the cool thing is the legacy is as powerful as it's ever been. It hasn't slowed down. It hasn't stopped. And so after the passing of Smiley, how did that transition into Sunny now? What's the...
So, we lost Smiley, in October last year. Carried on, and grieved, you know what I mean, which is important. I have a 9-year-old son that grew up with him. I had Smiley long before I had him, so he grew up with him. So he needed to grieve and get used to not having him here. And by probably by January, I put it out there that we would be looking for another dog to take in, to rescue. And we're looking for a dog maybe with vision impairment. We're good at this. We've done this. You know what I mean? Of course we would want. There's tons of dogs that need home, but we would definitely be taking in a special needs dog. And so a lot of people were sending me links to different dogs, especially throughout the States. I wanted to continue what I was doing, teaching. So obviously I was hoping for a dog that would suit that, but you never know. So anyway, somebody that I became friends with on social media who lives in Hawaii, who has a deaf and blind dog, Pearl, she follows all the, these rescue groups all through the States. And anyway, she heard about this young dog that was born without eyes, and it ends up the same condition that Smiley was born with. And he was rescued from Mexico, and then ended up going through a couple rescues, and ended up in Oregon. And so we contacted them about this little dog, and anyway, that was, so my son and I, during March break, we flew out to Oregon, and picked up little Sonny.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so the legacy continues,
Yeah.
and you're still
Yeah.
now you're speaking at more schools, and
Yeah.
and is there a next? Then there's a book.
So I wrote the book, while Smiley was still here, and he was still here when it came out, and it's it's called Smiley, A Journey of Love, and that's certainly what it turned out to be, and it won an award in the Ontario Library Association and the Forest of Reading. So it's in all the schools now, and it became it was in the reading program in the school. So it's been great that kids aren't on social media, they're not following Smiley, but now they've found him through this book, and they've read his story, and the life lessons are in this, and so now we're going back to these schools that have read the book, and we're doing a presentation, and we're breaking it to them that Smiley is no longer here, but we've got Sonny, and that keeps the kids,
smiles.
yeah, it keeps the smiles, because it would be pretty depressing going there.
Yeah.
Just me. They don't want to be mean. But with kids, they want to see. They wanted to see Smiley. They wanted to see his eyes. That's what it was. They wanted to see how he did it, and they wanted to ask questions. And I always say, gosh, have we ever, as a parent, and you probably remember, when you were young, and you'd be walking through the mall with your mom, and if you saw somebody that was born different with a visual, difference, your mom probably said, "Don't look, don't stare, you don't," and you might have had all these questions like, "What? Why? What? How does he do this?" Anything like that. But we're taught not to ask questions. We're taught not to look, and and kids just want to know, and so. What kind of fear have we, put into these kids about
difference?
Don't look at people with differences, obviously, wow, they're very different. We can't ask questions. We're not allowed to look, So that would mean, well, I can't be. So if there's maybe a student in your class that's different, I can't look at him, so I maybe I can't be friends with them, right? And so kids have questions, and they should be, those questions should be answered. And then there's no fear. I used to take Shepherd to some of our visits at Participation House in Markham, and it's a residence for adults with severe mental and physical disabilities. So these were obvious disabilities. Most of them were, they're living there because they're unable to, function on their own. So my son really got close with these people and got to be there and talk to them and listen to them and realize these are real people, that I can talk to, and in different ways I can communicate with them. He also learned that maybe when you meet these people, they weren't born like this. Maybe they were in a car accident and this was from head trauma, and that was also another thing that I used to drill into my husband, going about safety, don't think that you're not going to possibly have to be here one day, what I mean? A car accident, not wearing your seatbelt, something happens, you could also be there. You could be one of them. Anyway, so Shepherd was very used to people, with obvious differences. When I would go with Smiley and Sonny, people would say, the kids would ask a question, how does he find his water bowl? How does he get down the stairs? Just simple, basic life questions that they should be able to ask because they're curious, and that took a lot of that stigma away, and also, I will say that even adults at the beginning came up to us, and there was a few of them, and they would meet Smiley, and I would tell that same little story. They're like, "Oh, what happened?" So I'd tell them a quick version of his story, and they'd say, "Oh my God, that is so sad. Oh my God, I'm so sad." And they end up in tears, but tears of sadness. And I'd say, "Good God, would you walk up to a blind person that you met on the street and go, 'Oh God, that's horrible. What a horrible that's so sad that you're blind. You know what I mean? You would never do that. Those people I would spend a little extra
time with.
My dogs really want to come up and meet you.
I can hear them. The one thing I love about that though is a few past episodes we had a Muslim Canadian on, and we talked about the power of our narratives and how we speak, and a lot of it is about a lack of understanding. It's totally that, and even the first openly gay professional hockey player. It all comes down to the similar message. Like what occurred to me when you said kids have questions, they have these. So do adults, and so do I.
That's right.
And we're at a point in time where it's changing. So society's changing, which is good. Take 2 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It doesn't take. You don't need to read a book of everything about them. Just learn. Ask the 3 or 4 questions you have, and then when you walk past them, it's not that approach where it's fear or sadness. Like, I feel bad or I'm scared because I don't understand.
Or assumptions.
Yeah.
Because then people would just go. You know, they'll come up with their own conclusions if somebody doesn't answer them for it. Like just like these kids. You know, why let them imagine and come up with it themselves? How Smiley finds his water bowl, or or that it must be so sad that he doesn't find water.
Right.
You know what I mean? How does he find the water? How does he get, do anything? So I think that's really important. The kids know that they can ask questions, and maybe as parents, we shouldn't be, hopefully, you know what I mean? Parents aren't doing what my parents told us. Don't look at them. Don't stare. Oh, geez, somebody with a difference, quick, turn the other way. I hate to say that, but that's kind of what I recall. So, like I said, my son doesn't, it's very normal for him, you know what I mean, to be meeting people with a difference, and he realizes that they're the same, you know what I mean? They are people in there, and they might communicate different, and, and the participation house was our first placement as a therapy dog team with St. John Ambulance. And I'll say, they said that they had trouble getting a therapy dog in there because these people were very different. And dogs even see differences. And dogs do judge sometimes. You've heard some dogs are afraid of men with big hats.
Right.
Oh, my dog is fearful of men with beards. Tall men. Mm-hmm. My dog doesn't like kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they had said, dogs had trouble, and previously they had trouble getting a therapy dog to work in participation house because these people were very different, and their arm movements were different, and they vocalized different. Like a lot of times it was shrieks and high pitched and grunts and growls, and pats were very different. They don't have good motor skills for so the dogs were afraid, and Smiley went in there and again saw with his heart, and he didn't judge what he saw. He goes by energy, and boy, he felt that these people loved him just as much as I did, and Smiley didn't care what kind of pats they were. They literally a lot of times it was like this, and you could see, I watched it, he loved every minute of it, and he recognized these people's voices, and like I said, the voices were very different. Some of them were yells, that's how they, you could tell that they were very happy, shrieks and yells, but nothing spooked Smiley, and he just loved each one. Like, he'd hear that shriek and go, oh, that's, Gladys, and we'd go over there, and, he'd get right up onto the wheelchair. As soon as he'd feel the wheelchair, I'd tap exactly onto the arm of the wheelchair, and he would jump up and gently just jump up and land on that. And because most of them they couldn't reach down, and so then Smiley was in their vision. And nurses would say they had never seen this man smile. They didn't think he actually, there was this one individual, they said that I used to go and see him every time I went there, and I remember the nurses coming and saying there's really nothing there. I don't think he knows you're there. But I would still go to him every day, every time I went. And I used to bring a tennis ball with Smiley, and just, it was kind of like a little entertainment thing. And I would bounce the ball across the floor, and Smiley would follow the bounce, and he would get it and bring it back. And they thought that was wonderful, It was, glees, from everybody. And anyway, finally, I did start to see some improvements and more, this man actually made eye contact with me. And then I saw him look at Smiley when I had him up on the chair. And as soon as he made eye contact with him that day, I remember thinking, going, he's looking at him, he's truly looking at him. And then these shrieks of glee and a smile came out, and he was making all kinds of noises that the nurses came, running. Mm-hmm. And they saw him, they'd never seen him like that, So it was just amazing. And I always think, these are adults that once they lived with their parents, and their parents raised them, but once their parents passed on or couldn't care for them anymore, they moved here. Mm-hmm. So most of them, this is all they knew. They lived with their mom and dad, they got love from their mom and dad, and then they moved here. So you have to assume they've not felt that affection, from somebody. They've never been in love with somebody. They didn't meet, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They've never kissed somebody and felt that passion or something like that. I know this sounds strange, but you know what? I would watch their faces each time, and Smiley would, say, lick their hands, and or lick somewhere, just give a little kiss. He wasn't a big licker, but he would, give a couple nice licks, and the glee that came out of their faces, and I would actually see them. They would blush and they would giggle and this shy little boy or girl look, and I would think, that's probably an affection that they've never felt before, right? Mm-hmm. That's what I saw. I saw a little, boy in love or something, or a little girl in love that had their first kiss or something like that. So it was just so neat that I felt like that, maybe, Smiley did, bring out emotions and, that maybe they had never felt before. So I watched just a lot of amazing things in that time at Participation House. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, it really was.
I'm speechless, and that's usually when I say, kid, I'm out of words. We tie things up, but I wanted to end on, is there a way with all the work you're doing that people can support, or what would you say to people listening with what you're doing and your goals? How would you want to leave things off, or if you had anything extra you wanted to add, or where can they pick up a copy of the book?
It's in all bookstores. It's on Amazon. It's in the major bookstores, and it should be in all the small ones. So it's called Smiley, A Journey of Love.
Cool.
I think by sharing his story, it's spreading all these messages, whether it be on social media, like I said, there's just so many things, whether it's benefiting people or if it's benefiting dogs. Encourages people to, rescue instead of buy, or adopt, the whole thing. Sharing just a simple photo of Smiley or Sunny.
It's hard not to smile looking at the cover of the book.
Yeah, just something simple like sharing his post or a cute picture of him, because you don't realize how much somebody just needs to smile today. And when I read the comments on my post, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, and it's amazing, it's really made me realize that people struggle, and they're struggling through a lot, and they're having bad days, and boy, I hear stories, of things, but they'll say in their comments, just saying, wow, I really needed this today. Thank you for bringing a smile to my face today. I never thought I could. Just kind of all different ways like that, and you just go, wow, what an easy way to give back. Mm-hmm. Just a smile. That's, and that's one thing I also encourage kids in the classroom when I go to see them, is that everybody can give back. This dog who thought his life was horrible gave back in so many ways. Oh, he's blind. I can't do this. I can't do that, But look what he was able to accomplish and give back and help others. Everybody has a way. And I said, it doesn't matter if it's just making eye contact and smiling at somebody in the grocery aisle. I always say that, you notice when you're shopping and just you and one other person in the aisle, and you're going past each other. But heaven forbid you make eye contact, and maybe give a smile or just say something. You know what? That sometimes is all somebody needs. Maybe, there's that saying, you don't really know, another person's struggling, another person's struggles, that kind of thing. And that's by letting, and I try to tell my husband this too, just let them in. When you're driving, how hard is it? Just let them in. Do you know how happy you are when somebody lets you in? You're like, oh, thank you. Yeah. Share that. Let somebody in when they're trying to murder. Smile at somebody in the grocery store. Just sharing a smile. That's all Smiley did at the beginning. You know what I mean? It was just, he smiled and people smiled back. It's contagious. That's the other thing is I talk to the kids about. Yawning is contagious. So is smiling. You smile at somebody, they're going to smile back, and now they're having a good day. And you gave back. You helped that person. So it's very simple things we can do, and I really I wish I could, go to a different school every day. I wish I could talk to kids and everybody knows, they're our future. And when you get them, and that's where, I also used to visit nursing homes. And we've got a lot of hundreds of dogs, doing therapy work, great therapy work in the nursing homes. But I really felt like we could do something bigger than just making somebody smile, is teaching these things, these kids that need to know. I've got Sonny to do it with, he's young, and, because I do always recall Smiley really became, a superstar and really getting across the world. He was old, and we couldn't do everything that we wanted to do, because of his age, and, he could only, do so much. But Sonny's got a full life ahead of him, and I think we can really connect with a lot of people in his life and our life together.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of another Heroic Minds podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Smiley and Sonny and their journey, you can click the link in the description of this episode. It has their social media and also a link to purchase the book. I lucked out with a copy of the book and have it open and displayed in my living space, so when people walk in, they can't help but smile when they see the photo on the front of the book. As always, if you're enjoying these episodes, feel free to leave a positive review wherever you are listening to this episode. That'd be greatly appreciated, and continue to move this podcast in the right direction. I'm Ben Finelli. We'll talk again soon.